Welcome to WYCD Wicked, that stands for What You Can Do. It's your old pal Jake, and this is a salty Saturday. For those who don't know, I don't blame you because I haven't been clear myself. Salty Saturday was originally supposed to be a quick video where I read some of the negative viewer comments and respond to them humorously. But y'all are really nice people. There's not a lot of negative viewer comments, so instead it's more of a just unwind day. It's a weekend day. We are, for the most part, just going to be looking at some items in the news, being catty bitches about it, and having a chuckle together. That said, given the nature of this show, it is almost impossible for me to do a full show without actually telling you what you can do about something. So we do indeed have at least one item in here where there is something you can do, and that is regarding Minnesota's recent, gigantic LGBTQ W. They had a big win regarding the rights of the LGBTQ community. I think that's worthy of lifting up, and it is a model for the rest of us. The rest of us could take actions like this, and I think we ought to try. But for the most part, we are just effing around, having fun, unwinding, keeping our energy up so that we have the spoons necessary to take on the challenges we have to for the rest of the week. I'm also looking at doing something different on Sundays as well. On Sundays, I'm thinking of doing ice cream Sundays, where we find the funniest things that we saw all week, or that cropped up throughout the week, and just playing them in a goof. Something I'm thinking about. For this stream, if you have any clips you would like to hate watch together or heckle together, generally be salty about, drop them in the description. In fact, let me update that right now. Got a clip we should check out. Drop it. Let's try this. The URL in the comments. Let's pin that. Groovy. Well, all right. Let's jump right into it, folks. First up, I did very much want to talk about the 4-day work week and how I am salty about how we still have to do a 5-day work week in the United States of America. To me, that seems ludicrous. Let's have a look at this Washington Post article. Here it is. So, reading through this puppy, here's what it's like in other parts of the world. If the idea of working 4 days a week for the same pay sounds like music to your ears, the results of a pilot program from the United Kingdom may give you cause for hope. Let me make sure my mic's on. Yeah, it is good. I'm a pro streamer. Dozens of companies in the UK took part in the world's largest trial of the 4-day work week. And a majority of supervisors and employees liked it so much, they've decided to keep the arrangement. In fact, 15% of the employees who participated said no amount of money, I don't know if I believe that, but no amount of money would convince them to go back to working 5 days a week. Nearly 3,000 employees took part in the pilot, which was organized by the advocacy group 4-Day Work Week Global. I'm going to be remembering them, in collaboration with the research group Autonomy and researchers at Boston College and the University of Cambridge. Companies that participated could adopt different methods to meaningfully shorten their employees' work weeks, from giving them 1 day a week off to reducing their working days in a year to average out to 32 hours per week, but had to ensure that the employees still received 100% of their pay. At the end of the experiment, employees reported a variety of benefits related to their sleep, stress levels, personal lives, and mental health, according to results published Tuesday. Folks, you think about the American worker, when you think about going to work in America, what are the things that come to mind first? For me, it is sleep, stress levels, the effect on our personal lives, and the effect on our mental health. Doesn't it just sound like exactly what we need? Companies' revenue stayed broadly the same during the 6-month trial, but rose 35% on average when compared with a similar period from previous years. Let me just stress that. They reduced the number of hours their employees had to work by 20%, and what happened? Let me underline that. When reducing the number of hours their employees had to work by 20%, companies' revenue stayed broadly the same, and in fact rose 35% on average when compared with a similar period from previous years. I'm salty. There's no reason, none at all, we're burning up this much of our lives. We're not even accomplishing anything, according to that survey. That one. Of the 61 companies that took part in the trial, 56 said they would continue to implement 4-day work weeks after the pilot ended, 18 of which said the shift would be permanent. Victory. 2 companies are extending the trial. Only 3 companies, just 3 of the 61 companies, did not plan to carry on with any element of the 4-day work week. Good God. What are we doing? Honestly. I do think it is even beyond just raw dollars that has us working the way we do in the United States. Beyond that. I genuinely think there is a poison in American culture that makes us desire to have power over others, not just freedom for ourselves. I don't know what causes that, but I see it time and time again. The boss needs someone to fear him, and it's pathetic. The results are likely to put the spotlight back on shorter work weeks as a possible solution to the high levels of employee burnout and the great resignation phenomenon exacerbated by the coronavirus pandemic. One thing that, it's Salty Saturday. I'm going to get salty. Here's what bugs me about talk about the pandemic. Like, we're so shocked that people didn't want to go back to work after that. Do you know what happened? I'll tell you. A whole lot of people that were told that they weren't worth a damn suddenly got told they were essential, and they were asked to risk their lives. In exchange for risking their lives, what changed about those lives? Not a damn thing. They did what they were asked, and then they were told, now go back to pretending like you don't matter. That's what happened. They didn't want to. The cat was let out of the bag. These people who were told that the reason they were getting paid poverty wages was that they were useless. And then capitalism had to come crawling to them that the country could in fact not function if they didn't do their jobs, if they didn't risk their lives. And those workers, to their credit, stepped up. They stepped up. They risked their lives. They saved the country. And nothing was done to address the misery they have to live in. May the great resignation keep going. We're looking at, by the way, a general strike. I'm going to get this pitch narrowed down to the absolute most practical it can be before I give it to you, but no, the time has come. Let's look at this in a little more detail. Increased revenue, improved employee well-being. The findings of the UK trial build on the results of an earlier, smaller pilot published in November, and also coordinated by a four-day workweek global. That experiment, which involved about 30 companies and 1,000 employees in several countries, resulted in once again, increased revenue, reduced absenteeism and resignations, and improved employee well-being. None of the participating firms plan to return to 5-day work weeks after the pilot ended. All right. We talked about this in broader terms earlier. Can you recall the stream wherein we talked about it? I can. It was the stream where we talked about transitioning from pure capitalism to something in between this and the Star Trek vision of the future. Reason that there is more productivity, the reason that companies are functioning better when they ask less of their employees but still pay them the same. The reason that is working is because the employees are no longer fighting against their own tools. In a 40-hour work week, a lot of folks are at a place where they have to do busy work to justify being there because they're told they must be there. Because 40-hour work week came about in 1938. Since then, we have had a sea of new tools introduced to various industries, and we produce more. We get more done with our time. But one person can still only wear one pair of pants at a time, so if you are a pants maker, you are suddenly in a position where you're able to make way more than you need to make. And if you pay people on an hourly basis, but you don't need them working 40 hours a week anymore, you end up in a place where you pay your employees less, and the capitalists love that. Of course they do. But their employees still require the ability to put their kids through college, put food in their stomachs, a roof over their head. They need these things. The end result being the employee doesn't want less hours. Well, the employee doesn't want less pay. And so they find ways to get the hours, and they work less efficiently. It's silly that we're still doing a 40-hour work week almost 100 years later. With all of the production we've done, with all of the improvements we've made, it's A, silly that we're still doing it, and B, silly that there's any resistance at all to the idea that we should be lessening the standard work week. We should. Salty Saturday. I'm not going to worry too much about the what you can do, but I just can't help myself offering one. We should write Joe Biden or put it out on social media. Just start talking about it, how the 40-hour work week is a ridiculous concept from 1938. It was a great concept in 1938. It really was. People literally fought and died for that. But we have advanced. Capitalism was a great concept in 1668 or whenever the hell, when we were saying, okay, no more dividing things up by who's got the most knights sworn to them by a blood oath or whatever. Now we're just going to use dollars. But again, we have kept advancing, and we need to switch out the old methods when they're no longer relevant. The 40-hour work week is one such method, and it's time to go. Moldy bread. Oh boy. So as I'm sure everyone is abundantly aware of by now, Trump's in trouble. The fella is it would appear that charges are coming soon. Let's laugh about that together. Let's have a good old cathartic chuckle. And here's Andrew Weissman on MSNBC laying it down.
I'll start with you two. Andrew Weissman, what do you think is happening behind closed doors?
So it is not that unusual for a DA just before they decide to bring charges to give the target an opportunity to testify. Here, I have to say Michael Cohen is right that there is no way in God's green earth that Donald Trump is going to go in and testify. And one of the reasons we know that is what he did with Letitia James. In a civil case, he took the fifth over and over again. So if he did that...
You can't do that in front of a grand jury.
Well, he doesn't have to do that. He can just simply say, I'm not coming. He's not being given a subpoena. He's just being asked, would you voluntarily show up? Because you want to present your side of the story, and that's something that you do as a matter of sort of courtesy and due process, and he's entitled to say absolutely not. So there's no reason for him to take a different position here than he did with Letitia James. It's always possible, but I wouldn't hold my breath. And then the other piece is that you wouldn't ask Donald Trump to do that if you didn't have it in your head already that you were planning on to bring charges. I mean, this is the former president. This is a huge step. You know it's going to become public that you're doing that. So I know that we're constantly hearing things about it's imminent, things could happen soon, but this is one.
I did not use that word.
Exactly, because when we heard the word...
is tired.
Exactly, you heard the word imminent, and we're all speculating that means days, and it's been weeks, and it seems like it's going to be months. This is one where, yes, I do think that they're going to give the defense counsel an opportunity to be heard. That's the kind of thing you do routinely. But I think once that happens, unless they hear something that they had not thought of, again, I think that's unlikely. All signs are that we can expect the charges that you outlined in your introduction.
Can you weigh in?
I do want to step in just a little bit in defense of Fani Willis using the word imminent. We require the occasional kick in the ass. We require the occasional reminder that things are actually happening, because it has been, as I have been saying since the beginning of this channel, it has been the strategy in the United States for getting powerful people off of their charges. It has been the standard practice to let the case get boring, let it get stale, and let the American people forget about it. So Fani Willis saying charges are imminent. First of all, she didn't give a time frame. She said imminent. Fair enough. That can mean a lot of things. Second of all, she was communicating to the American people who follow this and who have now become aware of the fact that that is what happens, that she is actually moving on this. She didn't say charges are possible. She didn't say charges are likely. She didn't say charges are coming even, because she knows that for many people, that is simply prosecutor code for I'm going to go on vacation with the wife and kids, or the spouse and kids, whatever the hell. I think she was trying to tell the American people in the only way she really could, that this was a serious case being taken seriously. Bear in mind, when she said that, nobody else, not one other person, had given any sort of sign that they were actually pursuing justice for the American people. Just saying, in defense of D.A. Willis.
And on the legal questions as outlined by the Times, that there is the falsification of business records, but because campaign finance violations, the way we've come to understand them in our political discourse, are usually federal violations. Right. Talk about this second crime that may elevate it from a misdemeanor.
Yeah, so, we're in this predicament because essentially Bill Barr said to the feds after Michael Cohen pled to this, he said, stop. Don't go forward. So we're now in a position where the feds did not bring sort of the second shoe to drop, which was, okay, we prosecuted Michael Cohen, let's go after Donald Trump, who's more culpable than Michael Cohen in this conspiracy.
Right,
so,
it wasn't Cohen's money and he didn't have sex with the porn star.
Right, I mean, Michael Cohen, this is of course he wasn't doing this on his own. I mean, he was doing it for someone else, and as you said, it's not his money and it's not really his interest. He's doing it for his boss. So we're in this position where New York State is sort of picking up the slack, and they have this conundrum where they have a very clean, clear misdemeanor case, which is just a false business record, but that's a misdemeanor. And it's worth remembering that that is very clean. All of sort of issues that I and lots of other lawyers have been sort of wrestling with deal with this, the way in which it could become a felony. And that is, you have to be doing this in furtherance of some other crime. And people have speculated that the DA may look at federal crimes, they may look at state crimes, some underlying other crime to make this a felony. The one thing that seems clear, Nicole, is whatever they have chosen is going to be litigated. So step 2 of this, which people should get ready for, is they know that Donald Trump's a master at throwing sand in the gears, but this is one where there isn't going to be a lot of precedent for what the state is going to do, and I think it's going to certainly be litigated by Donald Trump in this case.
Well, I mean, let me just probe you on that. What do you mean? I mean, anything would be litigated by Donald Trump. That is how he rolls. That is what he does. That is so far how he's avoided accountability for things that any one of the rest of us would have been.
True, and let me just underline, I can't remember if Weissman gets to it. I think he does, but the point is, what a classic case. What a perfect opportunity to show the American people that we are not going to continue having two justice systems, one for the powerful and one for everybody else. Michael Cohen went to jail for this. Michael Cohen did time for this crime. Donald Trump is named, all but, I suppose. Donald Trump is the only person that can be individual one. He was involved. His involvement was laid out in a court of law. If he wants to defend himself, he can. But we can't have Michael Cohen go to jail for this and Donald Trump not. We just can't if we are going to say that we are indeed a just country.
Charged with and prosecuted for.
Yeah, absolutely. So the difference is, let's just take executive privilege. That is one where he has made these claims, and by all accounts, Beryl Howell, the chief judge for another week in D.C., has clearly said that doesn't fly, because there's a lot of precedent for that. You can look at the Supreme Court precedent, you can look at D.C. precedent. It's something where, I can look at it, defense lawyers can look at it and say, yeah, you're going to make the motion, but you do it because, why not? There's not a little downside, but it can be very quickly gotten rid of. Here, for example, one of the issues will be if the state crime is that you have to further another crime. Can that be in furtherance of a federal crime, or does the state law have to be in furtherance of a state crime? Well, the law is not totally clear on that. And that means that you're going to have briefing on both sides. There isn't precedent that a court can look to. And so that can slow things down, because when you're in a court, you really look to precedent. What have other judges done? Is there a clear room for disagreement, or is this something where someone's making their argument, but it's very easy to dismiss it? So it'll take a little while.
Let me ask you one more question. You work for a man named Robert Mueller who said famously, if I could say that crimes were not committed, I would. So clearly the public has been hearing from prominent and highly regarded prosecutors for.
And I would love if we would take that thing Robert Mueller said seriously. Wild to me that Merrick Garland didn't make strong moves in this specifically. Wild to me that we are left relying upon our states to get justice for the American people. I'll tell you this. I can't wait to pirate and then read Merrick Garland, so he didn't get any money, Merrick Garland's biography of this time. Because I can't wait to hear the excuse he gives for his strategy of going after as little as possible for Trump. I'm sure right now in his head he's formulating what he's going to say. And whatever his reasoning is, it's wrong. He shouldn't have the job he has.
6 years now that Donald Trump has committed crimes and nothing has happened. What are the stakes in your mind of showing that we do not live in a country with two standards of justice?
So I think that is exactly the right question. You know, a lot of people have been saying, is this really the crime that you should start with if you're thinking about the first charges against a former president? And I do not think that's the way that Alvin Bragg is going to be looking at it, and I don't think that's what the rule of law requires. I think that a way a prosecutor would look at this is not how does this compare to other crimes that Donald Trump may have committed, but rather, is this a crime that is prosecuted? Should we be leaving him aside? And I think one answer to that is Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen, as you pointed out, has done jail time in part for doing this, and he is less culpable on this crime than the person he did it for.
Not a similar crime when they're looking at precedent. Oh, have we charged for this crime in the past, this sort of crime? Not a similar crime, this very crime. Just understand what he's saying. This specific illegal payment, one guy got charged for, and another guy didn't. Oh, yeah, it was a white guy, of course. But, you know, in both cases. The point being, this very crime. Get him, Weissman.
So the rule of law means you treat likes alike. And I think what we are, very likely to see, both in Manhattan, in Georgia, and at the federal level, is finally seeing that the sort of rule of law being imposed where somebody will face charges regardless of what their prior employment was. Whether you were president or not, you should be held to account.
Sean Patrick Maloney, who have been
Weissman knocked it right out of the park. All right, Maloney, let's see what you got to say.
Part of trying to hold Donald Trump accountable. The country went through 2 impeachments because Republicans, who really didn't disagree with the facts in either instance, as I recall, didn't agree with the mechanism. You have Mark Pomerantz, who looked at this case before Alvin Bragg's tenure, said that the failure to prosecute, and if you're waived off of doing something because it's novel or difficult, that is inherently creating 2 standards of justice, one for all of us and another one for people like him. How do you see this moment in our country where there's a lot of anxiety about how Trump's base will react if he's finally charged? Frankly, with everything we've learned about Fox News, I don't think it's clear they'll even see it or know about it.
Let me just handle that first one first. I don't give a damn about how his base will react. We cannot consider whether or not a group of criminals will do criminal things if we enforce the law. I don't think his base is a group of criminals, but that is the element she's worried about. Step 1, simply on general principle. At that point, it's mob rule. If we don't enforce the law, if we even take that into consideration when deciding whether or not we will enforce the law, it's mob rule. Can't have it. Plain and simple. But I think more dealing with with the actual situation, the reason we shouldn't consider that is they act the way they act because there have been no charges. Think about it from the perspective of a MAGA follower. You watch nothing but Fox News and OAN and yada, yada, yada. You hear your people, the people who inform you, leveling wild accusations against powerful people all the time. Nancy Pelosi drinks the blood of babies, yada, 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 all that stuff. You're constantly hearing this. And then, whenever you're hearing from the other side, it's wild accusations. Donald Trump colluded with Russia. Donald Trump did an insurrection. And you look at the courts, and nobody's getting punished. What are you left to believe? You're left to believe, if my media lies, maybe some of the stuff they said has been disproven, but it looks like all media lies. If my guy's corrupt, maybe, but so's the other person corrupt, and powerful people just aren't punished. That's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario, they're lying. My guy didn't do anything wrong at all. In other words, they haven't seen consequences. There is no evidence from their perspective that this person is actually lying, is actually a criminal. So considering whether the base of Trump will freak out, it shouldn't be part of the decision-making process for whether or not you charge Trump with a crime. The only thing that should be considered, and this is going to sound crazy, I know, is whether or not he committed a crime. That's it.
But regardless of that, what are you feeling sort of with your political tentacles about this moment?
I think that Andrew broke it down very well, but the legal decision to prosecute is like playing checkers. The politics is chess, and I don't want to play checkers with Donald Trump because I'm concerned that you go indict this guy on a low-level charge or one you can't prove, and you'll make him stronger. So I am very concerned that if this is going to be the first legal case against them, that they nail him to the wall with it. Now, it's the right thing to do, so it's not the prosecutor's job or the judge's job to parse through that, but it's the...
Thank you. He's talking about how he feels about the case, but I'm glad he's making clear it's irrelevant and should be irrelevant to the courts how anybody's going to feel about it. Literally, the only thing that is relevant is, did it happen? Was it legal? That's it. That's it.
Job for the rest of us to make sure that in holding him accountable, we don't inadvertently make him stronger. But the Michael Cohen point, I think, is persuasive. He went to jail in my district, by the way. We have a lovely facility in Otisville. There's plenty of room for the Donald as well. We'll make room for it. We'll leave the light on. But all of us are enthusiastic to see some accountability here. But I do think in the fullness of time, we'll get the proper level of accountability on all the charges he's facing. But I do think we've got a very live problem, which is putting this guy away politically to protect the country. Now, ironically, Joe Biden may prefer a slightly stronger Donald Trump in this primary process because I do think he's the easier candidate to beat, but he's a more dangerous one for the country.
Yeah.
I got to say, and this is going to sound crazy if you've been watching politics for a while, I think Donald Trump accidentally gave a huge gift to Joe Biden, which is the revelation that you can address the oligarchy. Now, Donald Trump addressed the oligarchy and pointed out the inequity in American society, got the votes of people that hated the oligarchy, and didn't help them out. He did culture war nonsense, and then, of course, gave tax breaks to the rich. But Joe Biden seems to have seen the path with this. And the thing that's going to sound crazy, he can go left in order to appeal to a right-leaning audience. Yeah. Look, right-leaning just means they're... right-leaning in this case, I should say. I'm referring to just the folks that have been more likely to vote for conservatives. But what Donald Trump made so clear is a huge amount of the people that vote for conservatives really do not support conservative priorities. So often I hear people, in fact, I'll heckle the Midas Touch Network a little bit for this, despite the fact that I definitely recommend them. They're a fantastic network. But so often I hear them say, like, these aren't conservative beliefs when talking about MAGA folks. Like that's a bad thing. I understand the point they're making when they say that, but they're missing the opportunity. Because they're correct. Most MAGA beliefs have nothing to do with conservatism. So if you are not theoretically, if you are theoretically in the not conservative party, or if you are in the theoretically not conservative party, the Democrats, what you can do is appeal to those MAGA voters by giving them left policies. No tax breaks for the rich. We're not going to raise your taxes, but we're going to raise the hell out of the taxes on your boss, because your boss doesn't care about you. And that's fact. I think my impression has been that Joe Biden gets that. Why am I harping on this? Because he thinks that Joe Biden wants to run against Trump. I don't think so. I think Joe Biden has taken the full measure of all the GOP right now and is going, okay, where are my Bidens at? Oh well, we're gonna result of these. I think he's going, okay, Jack. And not concerned. Not concerned about any of it.
I mean, like, I agree with you. I think playing any of that sort of 3D chess in politics is a fool's errand. You have no idea what's going to happen the next day. But let me just press you on some of this. I mean, why didn't Merrick Garland pick up this case? Again, you know, Michael Cohen didn't have sex with Stormy Daniels and it wasn't his money, yet he went to jail. Donald Trump paid the hush money. Donald Trump benefited, we can only presume, from the act. Why didn't the federal government that prosecuted and jailed Cohen pick this up?
Right. It's been a great frustration of some of us who've been watching from the sidelines, particularly those of us who were on the House floor when they were coming through the windows and doors, that there's not been a moment of more direct accountability for all of these things. But I don't know the answer to that question. I know Merrick Garland's a good man. He's trying to do the right thing, and he takes very seriously his responsibility to prove a case, particularly in a case with a former president, because you are setting a very serious precedent. Bad cases make bad law was the expression, Andrew. Hard cases make bad law. Because Donald Trump has run roughshod over so many laws and norms, we believe you don't want to set precedent nonetheless for every president in the future. So I do think you got to get it right. But man, I would like to see the feds, particularly on the classified documents case, on the insurrection matters around January 6th, bring to the table some of the more serious charges than this one, even if this one is the first to come out of the gate.
I mean, I gotta say, they've put it very politely, but more and more that call's going out. I love to see that on national media, on the kind of stuff Merrick Garland is watching. I'm glad to see that they're talking like that. It's kind of a bummer to me that that we have an attorney general who it is necessary to kick in the butt, but I'm glad we have some competent people at the state level. Sprinkle that salt, Jake, says Catherine Wolf. Thank you so much. Andrew Was Nikki says, that dang dad video you suggested, Catherine, was fantastic. Yeah, it was. Really, really good video. This is, of course, Salty Saturday. We're being less productive today. We're hanging out and fetching, I think is the word. Got a couple of interesting clips. I'll let you in on a little secret here. A lot of this stuff is is just the very best of the sass clips that I was able to collect throughout the week. Just the sassiest. And if you like sass, there's a gentleman by the name of Ari Melber who has a pretty sassy program on MSNBC. Let's check him out from yesterday, because he had a great interview with it was Shay Komandori. I never say his name correctly, but he'll get a proper introduction from Ari in a moment. It's hilarious. It was fun to watch, and I would love to unproductively watch it with you.
What are House Republicans doing with their power? Are they fighting inflation? Are they trying to build more jobs in America? Or are they doing something they used to actually accuse a lot of other people of, which is being obsessed with the past, and something that really you don't want to see your own government do, which is support people accused of trespassing or attacking the police, or in some cases sedition? They are now opening an inquiry into what they call the alleged mistreatment of people who are defendants in January 6 cases in a D.C. jail, a kind of a newfound discovery of inmates' rights. Republicans on the Oversight Committee are also planning an actual delegation to visit the jail and demand answers from local officials. Now, before we go any further, let me tell you, if there is genuine concern about the treatment of human beings in government facilities, be they defendants, convicts, immigrants, that is obviously part of the government's job, to do that oversight and to have basically humane treatment.
I do want to say that is yet another great result of the system getting shaken up. How many? There was, 600 Jan 6 defendants? Okay, they all just serve their time. They do, 1 year, 6 months, whatever the average sentence is. They get back, and suddenly that person returns. Most of these folks, by the way, were small business owners. They were not the poorest of the poor. So they return to their communities, their bright red communities, and they say, hey, conditions in these prisons are terrible. They will have met a whole lot of black folks. They will have heard somebody's story about carrying a little baggie of weed in a state where it's not legal, and it being their third time being caught with a little baggie of weed, and that resulting in a multi-year sentence. I'm not saying they're going to, see the light, but they are going to know what that person is talking about when that person says, I did a year for having some pot. Might change some minds about the conditions in American prisons, which are one of the many things that we are going to have to answer for in later generations.
Of citizens or any other individuals under the control of the government. But having been as fair as possible, I could tell you none of the evidence here suggests that this is about that. Rather, it's a Republican effort to use this sort of theater and this sort of idea about mistreatment as a way to embrace people accused in some cases and convicted in others of attacking the government, of attacking the police, of trespassing and worse on January 6th. MTG is a part of this. She's already visited one of these jails, so this builds on sort of her early foray, and she compared the rioters who were being held there to political prisoners of war. As a legal matter, that is false. Green's also co-opting what we have discussed here, that there are valid criticisms and ways to try to make sure that people are treated humanely, whatever they're accused of.
I do want to clarify, I agree 100% with his assessment. The politicians who are making a big deal about this, they're just trying to embrace terrorists. That's it.
D.C. jail has actually been under scrutiny for its condition.
But once again, it would end up being to our benefit because their rhetoric accidentally keeps supporting lefties. Oh, I love taking advantage of it. And kudos to Dark Brandon over in the White House. He certainly figured out how to turn it on its head. He's like, oh, you cats want to say boo me. You want to boo me for saying you want to cut Social Security. So you don't want to cut it then. Great. Similarly, we could say, oh, you want to improve conditions in prisons. Great. Thank you so much. I assume you're going to sign on then to this bill that I've got that insists we not do solitary confinement randomly as just a standard punishment. Okay, cool. Great. Delighted to have your signature.
But we didn't see this type of concern or these kind of visits from these same officials around any other set of cases. Indeed, there are reports that a disproportionate share of people held there are people of color. The widespread attention on the jail is obviously one of these moments that sort of shows the cosplay, the trolling, the effort to get everyone upset about this is probably part of the method. And yet, on the other hand, if you have people in your government who are trying to directly or indirectly, literally or symbolically embrace the people accused of overthrowing your government, well, that's something you need to keep an eye on. And we're going to do that right now with a shrewd and special guest on a special day. You know what it is. We call it Che Day, where this cartoon comes to life in the visage of political strategist Che Komanduri, a veteran of several campaigns, including...
He looks like such a big damn nerd, and that makes me love him so much. Like, yeah, to me, I see this guy get that music. I see him get the little cartoon slide. That has the same feeling for me now as a 30-something gentleman as I used to get when I saw Mike Tyson enter the arena to an ominous tone. Not even a song, just a gong. This guy, he's gonna fuck him up. He's gonna mess him up. I can't wait. Get him, Shay.
The Obama campaign. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm great, Shay. Human or cartoon? It's a choice we make every time, but we keep choosing you after we show the cartoon.
I like that.
Yeah, I
prefer the human version of myself to the cartoon because
respect.
I get to sleep and eat. And,
you live here in this world, not just in the metaverse. Exactly. I mentioned all of that. I almost cleared the brush for you.
You're right.
I'm sorry, just even coming out the gate with, well, I prefer the human version of myself because I like to sleep and eat. Like, okay. Yeah, that nerd energy is the equivalent of being able to bench press twice your own body weight. I can't wait to hear his takes.
Important part seems to be that this is now not the entire Republican Party, but a key part of its elected leadership embracing January 6th. That wasn't where we were on January 7th. What do you see here?
What I see is January 6th is turning into a founding myth of MAGA. If you think about it, the movie Joker shows a transgressive act of violence, and it's celebrated by a group of outcasts and followers who then use it and use the leader, the person who did the violence, as a hero. And they sort of make this like sort of a founding myth that this act of violence was justified, that it said something very important. That is exactly what is happening here. This is not the behavior of a political party or even a political movement. This is the behavior of a cult. This is how cults behave. This is what cults do. They create lies, they create myths, and they force others to agree with them on that.
What's interesting is it depends on what level you look at it. Behavior of a cult, for sure, on the broad scale. Amongst the party, amongst the representatives, etc., it's the behavior of a mob, of like a mafia organization. Literally, man, that book Untouchable put it so well. Literally, the tactics that Donald Trump uses when he uses the press itself, social media itself, to relay messages to his underlings, where we all get what he's saying, but he doesn't literally say it. The dog whistles and so on and so forth. That's how mob people talk. It's wild, man. The upside is there's a hell of a RICO case against the guy, and that RICO case, which I have no evidence to support this. It's just my hope, my random piece of optimism that I can't quite kill within myself. I'm hoping that Merrick Garland is building a federal RICO case, which, for the record, all state-level RICO laws are modeled after the federal racketeering, yada, yada, corrupt organization. The reason I'm hoping for this is because, number one, that's what it is. It is an organized effort to break the law. And number two, if you recall, my two streams I did, wherein I criticized the hell out of Garland, the biggest issue with Garland that I have is that he has allowed already a ton of crimes to go because the statute of limitations has expired on them. Unless they're part of a RICO case. If they are part of a RICO case, the statute of limitations is gone. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. But that would be the only way that this guy can redeem himself in your old pal Jake's eyes. If he's like, no, we didn't let any of these go. We're just building a massive case, and here it is. We'll see in court, former President Trump.
All right, it's Friday. How deep do you want to get?
I can go very deep.
I'll go deep with you.
Yeah.
I'm a little tired. It's been a week. But you're speaking to something that goes to the profound sense of the legitimacy of force in modern civilization, which is the military and the police, properly overseen, are allowed to use force in the way the rest of us are not. That's sort of a canon of society in the Western legal system. Right. And you're showing to people that what we have here inside the government is support for an effort to misuse power or abuse power to legitimize violence and try to associate it with force. And that, if that builds over time, that would seem to be something that is more dangerous than any particular political leader, because those leaders come and go. But if this is part of right-wing authoritarianism in the U.S., then we have an ongoing democracy problem.
We do. And this is where we've always been sort of headed with Trump. Trump always introduced himself, and if you remember his inauguration in 2017, I alone can fix it. I alone am the answer. The way democracies are set up is you have a political leadership, you have institutions, the courts, the military, a free press, that come between the leader and the people. Trump has always presented himself as the leader, and then there are the people who must follow him. So the idea that anything can be sort of a check on his power or in any way mitigate his power has always been, must be sort of eliminated. So he has never seen that distinction that you have just laid out in a democracy, that we have a military that does not serve a particular personality or leader, but actually serves the American people in a constitutional order.
Just jumping in to say, this guy's putting it wonderfully. Big fan of this guest.
It's simply not part of the MAGA movement, and you can see it in the celebration of January 6th.
Yeah, it's really striking. When I listen to you, and I think about all this, where this stuff is headed, I'm short-term pessimistic, but I'm long-term pessimistic.
I'm actually much more optimistic.
Are you?
You have to remember, like in November of this year, of last year, the American people said no to the red wave.
Okay.
They said no to MAGA. And you see this all over the world. The Brazilians said no to Bolsonaro. The French said no to Le Pen. Everything, the signs both around the world and in the U.S. is towards a rejection of this. And all you have to do is look at the young people in this country. Gen Z, the millennials, they have voted overwhelmingly and consistently against MAGA. MAGA is not gaining new supporters.
Look at that.
It is just sort of making the old supporters more glued together.
Yeah, I got nothing but praise for Gen Z, I swear. Good young folks. Man, oh man. Yeah, on that note, I would say in your community, reach out to Gen Z first and foremost whenever you're trying to start something. Politically speaking, they have shown that they are willing to get down. They'll roll their sleeves up. They'll go door to door. They'll make phone calls. If they got $10, they'll give $5 to Bernie. They're dynamite, man. And I'm delighted to see talks about the government's use of force being discussed on MSNBC. These are weird times with very high highs and very low lows. Catherine Wolf says, "I hope you're right, Jake." Regarding the RICO case, I do too. I don't think I am, but I hope I am. There's a fella. Speaking of, there's a fella named Bernie Sanders. You may have heard of him. He is, in my opinion, the best of us right now when it comes to politicians. He wrote a book called "It's Okay to Be Angry About Capitalism." When I got to chapter 4 of that book, I wrote down, share this with the wicked community, because it is incredibly satisfying. And because I don't have anything very productive to say about it other than hell yeah, Bernie, well, it's going on Salty Saturday. Here it is. Presumably, I'll get it to play.
Chapter 4. Billionaires should not exist. Only by ending American oligarchy can we begin to realize America's promise.
You see? You know I'm going to like this. All right, here it is.
When I launched the plan to tax extreme wealth in the fall of 2019, a New York Times reporter wondered whether I was trying to eliminate billionaires. Actually, I replied, I don't think that billionaires should exist. That sentence launched hundreds of headlines and broadcast conversations, especially on Fox News and right-wing talk radio. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg admitted that at some level, no one deserves to have that much money. Elon Musk tweeted a couple of snarky comments. But what struck me was that a lot of people thought I must be kidding. I wasn't. In case anyone missed the point, my campaign issued a "Billionaires Should Not Exist" bumper sticker. Tens of thousands of Americans displayed them because they understood what most pundits did not, that the United States cannot afford to support a billionaire class that takes far more from this country than it gives back.
Just his language is so dead on. They take more from this country, billionaires do, than we can afford to give them. And that's the crux of the problem. Yeah, there's the unfairness, but we gritted our teeth through the unfairness in the 90s and the 2000s, which were the eras wherein the consequences of these decisions had begun to ramp up. But we're at a point where we can't afford them anymore.
The very existence of a rapidly expanding billionaire class in the United States is a manifestation of an unjust system that promotes massive income and wealth inequality. In this system, the people on top enjoy lives of extraordinary privilege. They possess more of the planet's largesse than they could burn through in 1,000 lifetimes. No luxury is beyond their reach. They are so phenomenally rich that they can spend their fortunes buying experiences like a rocket trip beyond Earth's atmosphere, while an exceptionally wealthy few wallow in affluence and become exponentially richer with each passing day. The majority of Americans live lives of quiet desperation. They are not scheming to pay for trips to outer space. They are struggling to pay for the necessities of life here on Earth. The very existence of billionaires is not just about who has the money and who doesn't. It is also a manifestation of a corrupt political system in which immense power over the lives of the great mass of Americans is concentrated in the hands of a small number of people who, through campaign finance arrangements that can only be described as legalized bribery, buy control of our elections and the policies that extend from them.
Yeah, I just want to say, for sure, first of all, Bernie, for sure, the fact that they have undue control over the political process is a major talking point. Going to let them go to it. I do want to say, how awesome is it that the book is read by Bernie? It's like ASMR. There's few things more relaxing at the end of the day than to have Bernie Sanders in your ear yelling to you about the state of capitalism in the United States. It's ridiculous. I'm loving it. But yes, aside from the fact that we literally cannot afford these mother effers anymore, the fact that we are having trouble now adjusting and, getting them to pay reasonable taxes, we're actually having trouble getting that done, despite MAGA and progressives being growing factions within their political parties, both parties having growing factions, in other words, that want these people taxed. We're still having trouble doing it? Why is that? Well, Bernie's explaining it perfectly. Because they have undue control over that system. It's a concern.
These are the Wall Street investors and corporate CEOs who determine whether jobs will stay in this country or go abroad, what kind of incomes working people will earn.
Also want to say, we will also now be measuring how much control they have, because there seems to be agreement that we ought to take away some of their wealth. How long it takes to get that done will be the measure of how much control they have. We did a stream called Getting Big Money Out of Politics. It is located, very easy to find, on the website, WYCDnetwork.com. Go to guides. There is a button called Get Big Money Out of Politics. If you want to know what you got to do to lessen these billionaires' control over our government, that's where you go.
And what the price of gas, prescription drugs, and food will be. And while these oligarchs exert enormous influence over our lives, ordinary people have virtually no power, or even the concept of power, in shaping the future of the country. They lack the institutions to exert influence, and they're too busy just trying to survive. In this unprecedented moment in American history, there is no more time for tinkering around the edges. It is time to reject conventional wisdom and incrementalism. It is time to fundamentally rethink our adherence to the system of unfettered capitalism and to address the unspeakable harm that system is doing to us all. In a country where there is little honest debate about our economic system and only marginally more debate about the political system that sustains it, the idea of rejecting unfettered capitalism and of doing away with the billionaire class may seem radical. It's not. The goal of any democratic, moral, and rational nation must be to create a society where people are healthy, happy, and able to live long and productive lives. Not just the rich and the powerful, but all people. Our greatness should be determined not by the number of billionaires who live in our country, the size of our GDP, the number of nuclear weapons we have, or how many channels we receive on cable TV. We should judge our success as a nation by looking at the quality of life for the average American. How healthy is he? How satisfied is she in her work? How happy are their children? We must move away from the economic mentality of scarcity and austerity to a mindset that seeks prosperity for all.
So, try not to lean too hard into what you can do, but just bear that in mind. Every time somebody in your community tries to define American success by who's got the most billionaires or what has a billionaire done lately, which, by the way, for my whole life is largely how I've heard it talked about. Anytime somebody tries to brag about that being an American thing, make sure to come back at them with, I don't care about that. What do I care about what a rich person does? Look, Saudi princes are living the life. Saudi princes have sports car after sports car after sports car. I don't care I don't measure how Saudi Arabia is doing based on how their princes are doing. Similarly, I'm not interested in what a billionaire in America gets to do when it comes to measuring whether or not this is a successful country. I'm concerned only with what the average American has to do. You don't have to be that that on a soapbox about it. I don't care about a rich person. What's the average person like? What does this mean for the cost of living compared to rent? Oh, nothing? Well, then why are we bragging about it?
To those who say that in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, there is not enough to care for all the people, our answer must be, that's absurd. Of course there's enough. With the explosion of new technology and productivity that we are experiencing, we now have the capability to provide a good life for every American. Our economic debates should not revolve around questions of resources. They should revolve around questions of intent and will.
Boom.
If we truly intend to make America great, we will strive to be a nation that has eliminated poverty, homelessness, and diseases of despair, where hard work is rewarded with a living wage, and where those who are too old or too infirm to work are protected by a safety net that guarantees no American will be destitute. That's not a utopian vision or some foreign construct. This country should have the best educational system in the world from childcare to graduate school, accessible to all regardless of income. We should have a top-quality healthcare system allowing all people to walk into a doctor's office and get the care they need without worrying about the cost because the system is publicly funded. Instead of spending more money on the military than the next 10 nations combined, we should lead the world in diplomacy and international collaboration, especially when it comes to preventing wars and combating climate change.
It's just a little taste of Bernie Sanders' book, It's Okay to Be Angry About Capitalism. Link in the description if you want to check it out. Obviously, I listened to it on Audible. That's somewhat problematic. But I am, and I can't stress this enough, a lazy man. And I do, like a child, enjoy having stories read to me. And if it can be read by Bernie Sanders, baby, you know I'm going to do it. But it's a fantastic book. Literally every chapter is one that it's a banger. You know, I do the same reaction to those chapters as I do to my favorite tracks on an album. I'm just like, oh yeah, that's clean. That's really clean. Yeah. Here's something else Bernie Sanders did that I'd like you to consider doing. In fact, I'd like you to pitch to politicians that you like. The reason that Bernie Sanders made such a successful movement, even though he didn't get elected out of his campaigns for president, is that he campaigned on issues entirely. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Let me go out for a second here. We talked about this a little bit earlier when we were discussing how to get things done on day one as a politician, campaigning on issues. When we were talking about Michigan, the turnaround it had, people were driven out to the polls. Democrats were driven out to the polls in 2018, largely because we were embarrassed about Trump, if I'm being real with you, but also significantly because of the propositions that were on the ballot. If you decide to run for office, don't just run on who you are. In fact, make it as little about you personally as possible. Make it about the policy you're pushing for, and try, if you have the ability in your state, in your town, wherever you're running, run on a day one platform. If you're supporting a campaign, try to get them to do the same thing. Try to get association with a thing they will accomplish that is being put on the ballot. If you can get a proposal put on the ballot, man, just have the campaign put their campaign resources into getting that done. Telling people about the proposal, because through hearing about the proposal, they're going to understand what the politician is really all about. Every time I see a politician come out and be like, hey, I've got 2 kids and I worked in the steel industry, what I hear is, hey, nothing relevant. I don't give a damn what your religion is, what your family's like. I don't care really about the human being. I care when it comes to the politicians. I care about the proposals. Because when it comes to the populace, I care about the human beings. And it won't make a lick of difference what the politician's personal life is like when it comes to policy. So, campaign on that. My suggestion. If you're going to support a local campaign, if you're going to volunteer, run as they say, run it up the flagpole. Talk to the boss about it. Talk to the politicians. Say, look, I think an effective strategy for you would be to say, focus on the policies you want to get done. If you yourself are going to run, that is the technique I recommend using. And even if you fail, there is a chance that whatever you got on the ballot passes. At the very least, you've increased the value of the discussion. And you've shown the people that there is value in supporting a cause, even if they don't win every single time. All right, there is one thing that I want to use. I want to do. It's got a wicket involved with it. Love me some Bernie, says Catherine Wolf. Wholeheartedly agreed, by the way. But I've already queued this up. Oh, I can't go back. So look, Bo of the Fifth Column, you know I love that guy. He just demonstrated why. From time to time, there's things I enjoy watching, and then there's things I enjoy watching that also lend themselves well to this show. This show is ultimately political organizing as entertainment. Bo of the Fifth Column is in that wonderful both category. And he just demonstrated why. Demonstrated why on Friday. Here's a video this man put out referencing a new bill by Minnesota. Yeah, in the state of Minnesota. I believe it has passed, or at least it looks like it's going to pass. And it provides protections for people who are under assault in our country right now. I'm going to let him break it down for you.
Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So
Hey, Bo.
today we are going to talk about the governor of Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz, and the executive order that was signed, what it means, what it actually does, why it was signed now, whether or not there's pending legislation coming, everything about it, and what the real impacts of it are going to end up being long term. Now, if you have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, it's kind of not surprising. So, as we have mentioned numerous times on the channel, there are a bunch of pieces of legislation throughout the country, about 400 in total. And they are aimed at marginalizing, targeting, harassing the LGBTQ community with the goal of legislating them out of public life in various ways. A lot of this legislation is moving forward. This legislation, it's not actually designed to do anything inside the state. It doesn't do anything to benefit the state. It's all about targeting and providing the base a scapegoat, somebody to be angry at, because anger motivates people to go to the polls. If you scare them, fill their head with nonsense about how they're at risk or whatever, they feel like they have to show up. So every election cycle, certain groups of people create an enemy and create situations out of whole cloth, things that don't even exist. And they say that they'll pass legislation to do that, to curtail this made-up problem. And that's happening in a lot of places. This is heavily impacting the LGBTQ community.
I do want to jump on that real quick and add in one point. It's not just, I know he's not saying it's just the LGBTQ community, but it's not, just so I'm absolutely clear, just them. It's black people. It's brown people. Sometimes it's yellow people. Sometimes it's yellow people over there. Sometimes it's yellow people over here. Only point I want to add is this is why, no matter what, allies, no matter what, when one of these groups gets attacked, all of us need to show up. Every last one of us. Black Lives Matter march, better see gay folks there. March for gay rights, better see straight folks of all shades there. White, black, brown, whatever. Indian, as in Native American, rights marches. You and me, I'll see you there. Bring a thermos of coffee, shake hands, good to see you. John, good to see you. Jim, let's go. Show up. Kick a little butt on behalf of the little guy. Because we are all, always, the little guy.
In various ways. Because the legislation is designed in a way where the cruelty is the point, a lot of them have enforcement mechanisms that go well beyond anything that a state government should really be doing. So, the governor of Minnesota has decided that Minnesota is a free state. That Minnesota is going to be a place where people from the LGBTQ community can go and be okay. Now, it's easy for a state to say something like that. That's an easy call to make and say, hey, we're going to be welcoming. This executive order prohibits the state government there from assisting and cooperating with those enforcement mechanisms. This isn't a PR stunt in that sense. This is the state government of Minnesota saying, oh, your extradition request, it's not valid here. That subpoena? Yeah, I mean, I guess you could try to serve it if you want to, but we're not making them answer it. And it's...
I hope, by the way, we do this with abortion rights as well. I want to see this across every state where they say this other state's abortion harassment will not fly in the great state of fill in whatever blank. I'm going to push for it in Michigan.
Degrading the ability of this legislation from other states. Now, why did the governor do it via executive order instead of legislation? Legislation's on the way. The executive order was pushed through and done quickly. I guess their reasoning behind it is because some of the legislation targeting this community is passing. They want this in place now. So there are no issues now. There is legislation pending in the state legislature in Minnesota that accomplishes the same thing, that would make it law. And I haven't seen odds on it passing, but when you hear people talk about it, they seem pretty optimistic. It does look like it's moving forward. Now,
Minnesota, you should be proud. And to God, that's baller as hell. Genuinely, Minnesotans out there, give yourselves a pat on the back. That's good governance. That is decency being fought for, and that is because You fought at the ballot box. Well done. Hell yeah.
Is this going to be the only state to do this? Probably not. Probably not.
Particularly if you use the link in the description and talk to your representatives and tell them, do what Minnesota did, please. We are decent folks here.
I would imagine that other states will follow suit. What are the long-term impacts of this? Well, you would hope that one thing happens. If it doesn't, you have to go to the even longer term. If this situation remains and the longer term impacts apply, Minnesota is going to get more business. Minnesota is going to get more recruitment to its colleges. Minnesota is going to get more investment. It's going to be easier for businesses in Minnesota to recruit. A place that, I mean, it's Minnesota. Let's be honest. It could probably use some economic development. This is going to help spur it. Businesses won't take a hit for investing there. They won't have problems recruiting because they put an office there. So it will help them long term. Hopefully, in the shorter term, it's setting up a situation where this stuff goes to the Supreme Court. It sets up a situation where the legislation that is passed targeting people then ends up in court.
It is my hope. I understand we have a right-wing activist Supreme Court, but it is my hope that the wave of cases that arrive at their doorstep that essentially say, hey, you remember civil rights, right? They still exist. Arrive just after the indictments fall on Donald Trump, or at least at some point after those indictments come. Because I think the right-wing activist Supreme Court is going to feel a hell of a lot less pressure once the country gets an opportunity to see that, yes, this scumbaggery that we have permitted, those days are up.
And a lot of the enforcement mechanisms, I don't think that they'll stand up, even under this court. And in fact, in some ways, especially under this court.
Interesting.
A lot of this has to do with people leaving a state to engage in business. There is a very specific part of the Constitution that deals with that, the Interstate Commerce Clause. I do not believe.
By the way, that was the foundation of the majority of the civil rights we enjoy these days. The reason you can't, for example, prevent a black person from staying at a hotel because they are black is, I think, Stokes versus the Heart of Georgia. I'll have to look up which case, but yeah, it comes down to the Interstate Commerce Clause. I'm hoping this the era we are in ends soon, and it ends in a way that affirms the rights of Americans without going the way it has gone, where we deny the rights of Americans.
That a lot
Human
of
beings,
this legislation
frankly,
is going to hold up. And by that I mean the enforcement part of it. What they are doing within their state, that sadly I think a lot of that is going to be upheld. But the reaching across state lines, not so much. We're going to have to wait and see, but this is something that it is very much a conservative piece of like a keystone thing for them, is the Interstate Commerce Clause. So I don't believe that those aspects of it will hold up, but this provides a mechanism to get it into the court, because you're going to have a battle between the states, and B, it provides people much needed protection right now. So the governor of Minnesota stepped up and put this into action when it really needed to be. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.
again, Minnesotans, you should be proud. You did good, and I appreciate you. What can you do? If you're in Minnesota, celebrate. If you're anywhere else, use the link in the description. Contact your representative. Say, we also believe in decency in this state, and we want protections for people that need it, for Americans that need it. And in the state I live in, I want these protections put in place. Because how you treat them will tell me what you think of me, your constituent. Hell of a job, Minnesota. Andrew Woznicki giving the wave. Hello there. Wireless mic. Hey, wireless mic. Good to see you. Once again, going to make sure that my mic is on. It is. I used to have a switch for that. Wireless Mike says, hey, I made it. Hi, everybody. Hi, good to see you. Wireless Mike. Securing the rights of citizens. Hell yes. Sonia Barris, hello. It's good to see you all. Well, tell you what. What do we got here? It's Salty Saturday. What do you say we watch a short from Midas Touch real quick? Just watching Matt Gaetz get shredded. I think I'm down for that. Let's check it out.
So my amendment gives the committee the opportunity to begin each of its meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'd like to offer an amendment to the amendment, adding in the second paragraph, provided, however, the pledge shall not be led by an individual who supported an insurrection against the government of the United States in any way. Let's make this real. If you want to give someone the right to stand before the House Judiciary Committee.
Boom. I've been saying we got to treat that like it was. Yeah. Nobody, including that punk right there, gets to say the pledge if they betrayed the country they are claiming to pledge allegiance to. Not a one. F that punk.
And lead the Pledge of Allegiance at a bare minimum. Let's guarantee that that person has not participated or supported or in any way helped an overthrow of the government of the United States.
Would the gentleman
yield? It's like a simple proposition.
Oh, yeah, baby. Yes, indeed. Who was that? That was Representative Chris Cripes. That was Representative Chris. Oh, shoot. Let's look it up. California, yeah, the Carolina Journal. That was not Jerry Nadler. Was it Nadler? Help me out here, folks. Who was that was speaking? Oh, no, Democratic Representative David Cicilline of Rhode Island. More praise here, then. Rhode Island, well done for getting Cicilline in that seat, because it was valuable having him there. Ooh, boy. He smoked him like a Christmas ham. It was delightful. If you recall, in Florida, some clown, I don't remember his name, recommended that the state introduce a bill, SB 1248, and that bill suggested that any party which had once upon a time supported slavery be booted out of the state. On its face, I don't actually think that's a crazy bill. I just want to tweak it a little bit. And it sounds like, more and more, it sounds like there just might be an appetite for this in mainstream politics. Here's the tweak I want to make. Because the Florida bill was ridiculous on account of the fact that the people that support civil rights now are the party that once upon a time was the pro-slavery party, that's a ridiculous bill. But it wouldn't be so ridiculous to contact your representative and tell them that you support a bill that would ban any party which has members amongst it at the state level that supported the insurrection. That's aiding and abetting the enemy. And just like Representative David Cicilline pointed out, it's a disgrace and it shouldn't be allowed. I think there is value even in introducing that bill. I think there is value in being able to make a bunch of Republicans stand up and say, whoa, you can't do that because a lot of our people did betray the country. Highlight that. Make that a matter of debate. I think there's value there. Give it some thought. If you like that idea, did I include that in the description? Well, in the VOD, I certainly will. And in previous, here we go. I'm going to make sure, I'm going to put it in the comments right now in case you want to copy paste this, or if you're watching the live stream played back, here it is. Never mind. That's too much. That's over the character limit. Instead, what I'm going to do is update the description. Here you go. If you want to put in a bill like that in your state, now it's in the description. There's the wording. At a minimum, we can bust the balls out of a political party that really needs their balls busted. And if you're lucky, it'll actually get passed. Regardless, though, kudos to, first, Midas Touch for clipping that beautifully. Second, for Representative David, I think, what was it, Caroline? I'm thinking of the Kung Fu guy now. David Cicilline of Rhode Island for knocking that right out of the park. Well, thank you for joining me on this Salty Saturday. I had a blast hanging out with you. Before we go, let's look at the winner of the poll. We asked the Wicked community, the Senate, which is you listening right now, the House, which is the people that listen in the comments and participate in the comments later, as well as the lobbyists, the people who pay for memberships. You can do that if you so choose. It's $5 a month, and it buys me Sody Pop. We asked who they think will be the first to indict. There was District Attorney Alvin Bragg, there was Special Counsel Jack Smith, and there was, of course, District Attorney Fani Willis. The Wicked community in total believes Alvin Bragg will be the first to indict Donald Trump for the hush money payments that Michael Cohen has already done time for. That's not a bad choice, I gotta say. Well, thank you very much for joining me on this Salty Saturday. This has been WYCD Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. My name's Jake.